Welcome back. Well, yes, we've got Mr. Garba, Shehu, who is a senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on Sunrise Daily, Mr. Shehu, and Happy New Year to you.
Same to you. I appreciate this opportunity. Happy New Year to all of you guys there.
Well, yeah, already lots of reactions concerning the president's interview, and rightly so. You know, the dailies are already quoting him saying he's looking forward to 17 months so that he can go. He's done his best. Are you equally looking forward to your 17 months? How does that feel for you?
Well, I must say that we are fortunate to have been given this opportunity to serve by the president. If you look back at people who occupied the job we're doing, I and Femi, in the past, I'm not sure you had anyone running these offices for more than 2-3 years. Maximally 3 years, and then they are moved. So we've been here 7 years, yes. So, yeah, it's not a bad idea to look to new challenges after 17 months from now.
You know, when the president says that he's done his best, age is telling on him, many wonder, would they be right to then say, well, in that case, we may not expect so much more from the president in terms of perhaps policy, development, across board?
On the contrary, I think that the president is determined to make the last push for major policies, major infrastructure projects that he believes must be delivered before he leaves. The president can be, very casual sometimes in speaking and jovial and jocularly. I think this is what people feel to understand of him. They need to understand how, in the first place, he was persuaded, pressured into accepting, to even run in the first instance. He had served as a governor, minister, and military head of state, and that's the highest he could get. He had retired home, and Nigerians came and said, well, you are the right person for this moment. We need you. It took some persuasion. So yes, it is right for the president to say, well, he has given his best, and when the time is up, he goes, and some other person will take over.
I know that you're well aware of how election years usually are in government. I mean, you've seen several of those scenarios, how that such times like this, it's usually difficult for governments to achieve much because there's usually a lot of focus and attention on what's going to happen next politically. So do you think this will be any different? Will they be able to achieve, will government be able to achieve as much as they'd like to?
Yeah, I think it depends on the focus which they bring to bear on what they want to do. And happily, you have a president who is not going to do 2023 hands-on. He has told the interview panel he's not going to write the script for 2023. He's not going to anoint. He's not a kingmaker. So he's focused on his job, and the actors in the field are there, scrambling for, competing for offices, and it's up to Nigerians to determine who will lead them. I think that the president is determined. He wants to ride on Abuja Kaduna Expressway back home. When he finishes 2023, he has said it clearly. I want to go ride on that road and go home. So a number of projects of key priority, he is focused upon: the Niger Second Niger Bridge, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, East-West Expressway, the railway, Calabar, Lagos, Maiduguri, Port Harcourt, Maiduguri, Ibadan, Kano. All of these things are matters of priority, and he is seeking to commission a number of them before he leaves, and we're hoping that this will be achieved.
Well, you talked about the last push earlier, and one of the things that the president said in the interview with our colleagues is to reiterate the fact that just about 2.5% of Nigeria's arable land is being cultivated. One wonders then, how significant a push will the president be willing to make or intending to make to grow the agroeconomic capacity or potential of Nigeria? What's your take on that? Because I mean, looking at the budget breakdown, there are questions around how significantly we intend to push Nigeria's agroeconomy.
I think that if you want to see growth in that sector, you should look beyond federal government spending in that area. The government of Nigeria doesn't have all the money that is required to grow agriculture. It has to be driven by all tiers of government and more so the private sector. The government must be in a position to provide the enabling environment. He has talked about young people who finish from university aspiring for government jobs that are unavailable. Now, as we speak, we have in the state I come, Kano, we have an association of graduate farmers. People who have said, okay, we got the certificates, MA, BSc, MSc. Let's go and do something different. Nobody is regretting, among those people. They're doing quite well, and I'm aware that in a number of states also, and graduates have come together, organized, and they have gone into agriculture, and they're reaping the dividends of their own decision.
Well, one of the things the president said about agriculture is to improve infrastructure. And in that line, he was talking about, buying tractors and all those things which have to be brought into the country. And when I heard that part, the question that came to my mind was, if only we had Ajaokuta Steel Rolling Mill active. And there's been a lot of talk about that within the 7 years so far of this administration. How far with that? I mean, there are those who are wondering, maybe if that was active and, really viable, maybe we'll not be having, at least we'll be looking forward to reduced spending in infrastructure from abroad. We'll be getting them more at home.
I totally agree with you on this one. And to say that, this government has done more than any other in bringing life back to Ajaokuta. The president engaged the Russian, the Russians who put together the plant. The highest level met Mr. Putin, and they extracted a commitment from the Russian presidency that they will join us to do this. And the Russians had come, they had met with the officials, the Ministry of Mines and Steel, and progress was made. I think blame COVID for the interruption of that process, because the engagement had seriously begun, and then COVID came and everyone was paralyzed in a way. So I am hoping that perhaps in the year 2022, the Minister of Solid Minerals, who is actively pushing for the return of Ajaokuta, would deliver results before the administration leaves office. Yes, manufacturing at home would help. And I believe that we are well on the way.
Another issue that was a little thorny in that interview was that of power. And my colleague pointedly asked, where is the power? I was actually expecting a reference to the Siemens agreement. I didn't get it. How far with that?
Well, but the president also said at 2 points in the course of that interview, or was it the interview with the NTA? Let's not talk too much about it. Let's deliver. Because the thing is that the thing with power and so many other things in the country is, I think that Nigerians are getting sick of being given promises and they want to see results on the ground. I think, okay, the other issue was the vaccine thing. The president said that. So let's deliver it. And I think that you see how we ended the year 2021. The Minister of Power was before the cabinet. He delivered the largest number of any request for approval for federal by Executive Council by any minister that I know in the 2 terms of President Muhammad Buhari. 16 memos were okayed. Most of them linked to the Siemens project. So we're ready to go with the Siemens. Procurements are ongoing. And yes, power would improve, will grow incrementally, and we'll get there.
Well, I know that I think the party, the authorities, everybody knew that the privatization happened before the APC then promised that they were going to address that power supply challenge that the country have. I think at some point in one of those documents, we saw 40,000 megawatts, I think for 4 years, or is it for 8 years? And at some point, they said, okay, on a yearly basis, 10,000 megawatts. And now, none of those targets have even been met. One wonders, how difficult really, is it clear now that the party clearly overpromised and underdelivered?
No, on the contrary, I think that the situation on the ground constrained the government and the party from delivering much more than we have. Don't forget that as we speak today, we have doubled our availability to homes and factories in the country. In terms of generation, it has been increased 200 times. Today, this country, we have capacity to provide, to generate more than 13,000 megawatts of power. We're given the uptake is only is up to 5,000 as we speak now. That is not the best, but it is an improvement on the 2,500 megawatts that we inherited. This government inherited, as you rightly said, a privatization process, which the president said in the interview with their channel, that it was largely driven by the need to gratify political interests. People were, discourse, this so-called, they were dashed away at political interests. Without capacity, without interest, everyone thought the power sector was another MTN or Econet, and they were just coming to make money cheaply without putting in one penny. And the worst thing was that the new owners of the disco, they were fortified sufficiently by the law to ensure that they are protected by the kind of aspiration, the wish to act as the Buhari administration has shown. And we have shown a capacity to circumvent them. This thing about willing power, willing buyer, willing seller scheme that was introduced by Minister Power is a very innovative thing that we're able to go behind and beyond them and deliver bulk power to people who are willing. It's sad we don't have sufficient power in our homes, in our factories. We have sufficient capacity. Generation is about 8,000 megawatts. And the generation 13,000, transmission about 8,000, but the uptake is just about 5,000 as it is now. And no matter how much you pressure them, the discourse won't just take power; they reject it.
Mr. Shehu, assuming that were the case in terms of the privatization exercise, them being fortified and prepared, when the government then came in, there are rules and then there are laws. You have the regulatory body, the NERC. So how or why is it that they couldn't hold them accountable? Because if you have targets that you have promised Nigerians that you will deliver, why let anything stand in the way? I mean, other agencies, regulatory bodies held other sectors accountable. Why was this any different?
Well, you know that the government has a responsibility also to provide security, a secure investment climate in the country. Nobody wants to be a government that is rated abroad by investors as one that is confiscating investments. We're not going to be graded as one that has come and is seizing foreign and local investment. Nobody less. Otherwise, nobody would come with their money into the country. The law is an act. That's the way it is. We must respect the law as it is. But as much as possible, government will do the best that it can, work within the existing legal environment as much as possible, circumvent all these obstacles and deliver our Nigerians because they want it.
Well, does that mean that if they set in place some of those agreements and those rules, if you hold them accountable, is that tantamount to seizing those investments? Because many would have thought, but wait a minute, if they promise to deliver power or electricity supply to certain people and they don't, and they charge for that, and you say, no, that cannot happen. Those are part of the things, little corporate governance issues and regulatory issues that when that happens, I don't think anybody will frown on that.
No, that is an ongoing thing, is an everyday issue. I'm talking about the big issue of ownership myself. When I say this, we're talking about the big issue for who owns them, they are questionable ownerships. And they're not delivering on the commitments that they signed on to. And to go forward and seize and give to some others, you are sending the wrong signals. That's our concern.
All right, but at the moment, can you tell us, is there any of those power supply targets that government set? Did the government meet any one of them?
Oh, sure. We
Which
have,
ones?
as I told you, well, when you are talking about the numbers in campaign manifestos represent aspirations to be achieved. They are not laws, they are not cast in stones. You aspire to do 20,000 or 30,000 megawatts of power. And yes, so we have moved on. As we speak today, as I said, we have notched 13-point-something thousand availability. It's remarkable. The important thing is, why don't we look inwards? Can we put in place measures to use up the 13,000 that is available? Because a lot of power is generated and wasted. In some cases, in fact, government is providing subsidy to generating companies because it is compelled to do so by agreement signed between government and those generating companies before they came on board. So we're moving on. The Siemens came, and at the highest level of authority in Nigeria, Germany, Siemens did this in Egypt. 16 years ago, they helped Egypt to modernize power distribution and the generation. We are working with them. It's a privileged status that has been conferred on Nigeria by the German government, and we will see a lot of difference. We have targets for this one. We hope we will achieve before the end of the administration. We'll get to where we have promised the Nigerians.
How is government providing subsidy for generating companies? Because I know that there's a lot of funding that goes for those sectors. If it's been privatized, why subsidize?
Well, I think that the government is a continuum. This is what you have. If I remember very well, I'm sure that the one particular instance I have in mind is the power generating plant in Edo State. And I remember this one that is subsidized by up to $5 million per month. It's by written agreement from an administration that preceded us, and the government committed itself to this in order for them to come and set up this power plant. And here we are.
Okay, well, one of the, you talked about projections, and usually I would assume that the better mantra would be to under-promise and over-deliver. But what you're saying now is that the reverse is the case. But one other promise that the president has made was in 2019, when he said, and I quote, "We can lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years. That's 2019, 2020, 2021. That's 3 years. Let's not count 2022 yet. I would assume that if my math is correct, and of course he said it's going to be in partnership with the states. If my math is correct, that would say at least 30 million people ought to have been pulled out of poverty by now. But the budget of 2022 is 3% for social development and poverty reduction. Do you see that happening in this year? Maybe I should ask you pointedly. How many Nigerians have been lifted out of poverty since 2019?
But this is the same question your panel asked the president. The president did not give you an answer. And I don't expect an answer to proceed from my lips, because the numbers probably need to be worked out by the officials, and I hope they will be encouraged to bring the numbers and say this is how much we have achieved. However, again, you must look beyond the budget, for the attainment of, as a matter of fact, government is not supposed to do more than 15% of all of the engagements that are required to lift this 100 million people out of poverty. Is a huge, over 340 trillion naira needed to be spent, mostly investable by the private sector. So everyone will be engaged. It's not as if it's President Buhari who would just, with the stroke of the pen, say 10 million people are open. And it's not going to work that way. It is an all-encompassing process involving all of the tiers of government and the entire private sector, and they have agreed to buy into this thing. So we are collectively moving on this as a nation, collectively.
Is that to say there is no figure? I would assume that before that promise was made from the office of the #1 citizen of the country and chief executive of the country, I would assume that all of those multi-sectoral conversations would have been had and the states would have been on the same page with the president to get that done. So that's my assumption here. Is that to say that there is no figure and no central agency coordinating that position of government?
No. You asked for what are the numbers as of today.
Yes.
You are speculating that maybe 30 million will have been. And I told you I don't have. Is there an agency? Yes, we have a council that's chaired by the Vice President of Nigeria that is responsible, for the process leading to this. So it's not as if it is not anchored. It is anchored under the Vice President of Nigeria.
I think it would be nice if we can reach out to this agency so that they can give us some figures and in order for the vacuum not to exist. But if as we wind down, let me just read out some of this. I mean, I see here that in 2015, the youth unemployment rate was 7.81%. And then in the fourth quarter of 2020, 38.5% of the labor force aged 15 to 24 years in Nigeria were unemployed. I don't know how government is going to assess itself at the end of the day, so maybe we'll leave that for government to do, but the figures are all out there. But if you could tell us, what then should the country look forward to, perhaps in terms of the economy, or what projects should we expect this government to deliver in this 17 months left?
Well, the president has been clear and specific in what he wants to achieve in terms of his legacy, the issue of accountability, and the blocking of loopholes through which money is stolen in the country is important to the president. He wants to leave behind a legacy of trustworthiness and accountability, and we want that. Talking about projects, the president has prioritized a number of projects that he has placed under the Presidential Infrastructure Initiative, and these are funded largely and mostly from the funds that are domiciled in the sovereign wealth, authority of the nation. And you're talking about the major roads like Ibadan, Lagos, due for completion, Abuja, Kaduna, Zaria, Kano, due completion, rail track, Kaduna, Kano, Maradi is going to be delivered before he leaves office. The rehabilitation of the ongoing rail work, Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, and the completion of significant portions of the East-West Expressway, and in particular, of course, the second Niger Bridge. These are major projects that are well-funded and will be delivered before the president leaves office.
All right, so just a quick one. Do you think Nigerians are better off now than when the president took over? From the figures you've seen out there.
The dynamics are changing. Without the president, without his standing for national security, without the support he gives to the military, life would have been worse than it is for Nigerians.
All right, then, Mr. Garba Shehu, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, let's take a look at some feedback coming through from you. This one is from Professor Chris about the 2022 budget. He says, corruption, dearth of investment in SMEs, inept political leadership, jaded economic policies, recurrent expenditure, and non-diversification of the economy are prisms of our underdevelopment.
This one from Festus Akimboyewa says, while I absolutely support removal of oil subsidy, government should demonstrate that they understand that Nigerians are hungry and bring down cost of food.
Well, this one is from Abubakar Kasum, and he's talking about youth corpers and farming. He says, I want to suggest to all unemployed graduates, what is really needed is attractive packaging. Let youth corpers and other unemployed graduates feel like company owners in agric business. Government should bring them together in small groups, help them to register their company, help with land and other inputs. They will feel like self-employed or even employers of labor rather than feeling like farm laborers, and they will likely be more committed. So that's from Abubakar Kasum. We also see your mail, Austin Ipo. We're totally out of time. We'll be taking, would have taken it, but we're totally out of time. Thank you so much for watching this lovely Friday morning. Can't believe it's already the end of the first week in the month of January 2022. Wonderful how time passes quickly. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Yusuf.
Amaya Makinde, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Well, the year is clearly hitting the ground running. Well, thank you for watching. I'm Chamberlain. So, goodbye.